when I was looking after my mum, I didn't think I was a carer because I lived in a separate house and because mum had carers that would go in. So I just thought, well, it's my mum, I'm not a carer. But actually, there was so many things, it would have been great to get advice. If you help to look after a family member or friend who has a disability, long-term condition or an addiction, you are a carer. Carers can get help, you know, and are entitled to rights. If this is you, give the folks at North Lanarkshire Carers Together a ring and they'll keep you right. Because carers have to know. Carers Together, working for you.
We know of you from the telly, but what's your journey to get to the recognition that people like us know you? So how did you get to this point?
Well, just really, when I was at school, I thought, I'd like to go and sort of do a drama course because I was kind of rotten at everything else. I didn't know, I like dressing up and carrying on. And so I did. I went to drama school, then left drama school, and then just got different theatre jobs, different wee telly jobs. And then I met Ford and Greg, Jack and Victor. And we did other wee shows together. It was a kids' TV show. There was a sketch show. Then I did Tune the Fact for the radio. And then it just kind of came on that they wrote Still Game. And I just had a baby and Greg's wife had come up to the house. And you know what it's like when you've just had a baby. It was hard. Yes, it was hard going. I think I was greeting. And Julie went, Jane, it's going to be all right. She went, the boys have written something. They've written you a wee part. And I was like, oh, Julie. She went, yeah, you're playing a pensioner. I was like, okay. No. So, and the rest is history.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what we're saying, and also we'd seen that you worked with Gregor Fisher as well. So that was an early one. And when I mentioned that we were coming to meet you, my son was like, "Oh, Granny Murray."
Oh yeah, which is
he's that age.
Too. That was called. It was an unfortunate title.
I know. In hindsight,
yeah.
Did that come before?
Yeah, Me Too was before Me Too.
Yeah, that was 2007 or something, wasn't it? Because he was only little, but he used to just sit and be riveted.
Oh, it was great fun actually doing that. We used to have, it was just beside the Rolls Royce plant in Hillington that we filmed it. And so they were bringing down the plant, so there used to be loads of rats, so we would have to cut filming because this idyllic beautiful looking cottage of Granny Murray, and there'd be a rat at the back door looking in. But no, that was great fun actually. It was really good.
No, that's fantastic. And it's very much that's the sort of thing when we were asking that question. I know what my memory of it is, and it was like, no, that was really exciting when we heard you were going to come and join us. We
used to say that because she'd always talk about her husband, and we used to always imagine that she'd murdered him and he was buried under the patio.
That's where the rats were coming from.
Yeah, that's where the rats were coming
Back
from.
to the Brookside days again, bury people under the patio.
So that's been it's absolutely fantastic. Thanks for that. But it was certainly the fact of the matter is, it is, as you said, it's been quite the journey, and it's good that you got the break from Ford and Greg, and you're now recognised by people, though it does, I'm sure, come with a curse.
Well, it was a wonderful character to play, and I love the boys in the show because we are like a family. You know that we brought up our kids together. We, you know, they kind of came through. We all came through everything together. Really, you know, the kind of journey. Yeah, I mean, I do. I love them
Must
to
be
bits.
quite emotional, kind of breaking up the family, breaking up the band, as it were.
Yeah. Well, do you know we said that because, like, rather than having a big dramatic death, we just faded away.
Yeah.
And that's what happens usually with older people. That, you know, you would go, oh, do you remember Mrs. McDermott that lived in the street? You go, oh, what happened to her? Mrs. Campbell. And it was always, you know, nobody really knew what happened. Did they go into a care home or the hospital? It's just one day they faded away, and then somebody else lives in the house. And you know, so I think that's what they wanted to reflect, that communities move on, time passes,
Of
and
course they do, yeah.
and you just look back and go, oh, remember that old guy that worked in the shop in the Reeds? And that woman that cleaned for him, do you mind her? She was dead nosy.
The home helps, as they used to call people, yeah.
And
And that kind of leads on, I suppose, to, we know from press and different articles that we've read, and you've been quite public about it, that you were a carer yourself at one stage. So our organisation supports carers. We to try and give information and advice, and we do quite a lot of engagement work. So we know that you were what's known as a sandwich carer. So that's somebody that's maybe caring for the older generation and the younger generation, so your mum and your kids, as we understand. Can you tell us a bit about that, and maybe let the audience hear about how Jane felt as a carer and how challenging it was for you?
Well, I think the thing is, you don't think of yourself as a carer because it was my mum and dad. So you're looking after your kids, your mum and dad, you're working, you know, that's just life, and so many people are in that situation. You would never consider yourself a carer. And then I remember there was this kind of awards thing that we were at, and Gavin Mitchell, who plays Bobby the barman, and so he'd called me up onto stage, and he is so just the most beautiful human being, Gavin, anyway. So anyway, he said a few nice words, and he said, Jane, who's also a carer. And then I was like, Gavin, that's a brass neck. I'm not a carer. I'm looking after my mum and dad and the kids. He's like, Jane, that is being a carer.
defining it.
And I think there's a big thing where if you're not paid to be a carer, if you're still working and you're still, you know, busy in other aspects of your life, you don't think of yourself as a carer. So what happens is life becomes about, well, you need to earn money for a start, and then you need to make sure that your parents are okay. So, and mum and dad were amazing when my boys were young. They helped me so much, and they had the kids all the time. They were like Disney parents. They were so cute. They were so kind. And like, you know, everybody loved my mum and dad. And so I think, so going from that to then everything started to change, and then they started to go down the hill. So mum was 43, my dad was 48, I think, when I was born. So I'm in my 50s now.
Known as a geriatric mum in these days,
geriatric mum, that's right. So they were at an age where the boys were still young, but mum and dad were going down the hill. So it was that crossover point. So the boys would love it though, because my dad got a chair in the house where you press buttons and the chair would go right back.
Riser recliners.
And it was called the chair of death because it was passed on around so many different households, and then the poor soul would die. And then sometimes, you want a chair? My Uncle Frank's died, and there's a chair going if you want it for your dad. So poor Papa had the chair of death, and the kids would sit in it, and my dad would be right back, lying right back, and they'd put him right up forward and right back. And my dad used to always go, that boy's wild as heather, when he should be demented. So, and they would take them out in the wheelchair, and they would fight over who was to push the wheelchair. And then one would be in the wheelchair, one was in a walkie thing with the wheels. So it was always chaos. It was the car trying to get the wheelchair and the walker in, trying to
tuck the feet in.
Tuck the feet in, your back will be killing you. You know, the boys, I would be like, don't push, don't, slow down, Papa's going to come out of that chair. So it was just watching everybody, you know, it was chaotic, but it was also great fun. And then my mum did a lot of the care for my dad, and then she kind of started going down the hill. Then my dad had died, and then it was just mum. So it kind of got to a point where they did both of carers, then mum had carers coming in. It was once a day, twice a day, then by the end it was 4 times a day. So like in my head, they were the carers. So you know, and they were the best carers ever. I mean, they were amazing. Every single one of them, my mum loved them. They loved my mum.
Type of person to take that role on, doesn't it?
I mean, they would visit her on their days off and stuff. It was just, you know, they would take presents up to her. They would visit in hospital. A girl that I did a baby years ago still would regularly come, so my mum was close to the wee girl. I mean, they were really amazing. So they were the carers, but you were still talking to them nearly every day. You were still taking messages in. You were still going up and down every day. So it did. There was a point, I kind of feel, where it did get to a place where I thought, oh, I don't know how much longer I can sustain doing this, because I was an only child, it was all the hospital appointments, it was all the doctors. Then it was like, mum go, oh, I broke my glasses. I go, no. And then she'd a she fell and smashed her front teeth, and it was a real shame because my mum and dad really looked after their teeth. And she was in her 90s and she still had her own teeth, and then she'd get a plate.
Oh no.
She was always losing the plate. You'd find it in the back of the fridge, or you'd find it.
I'm resonating with so many of these stories right now.
Well, we found it once, the boys. She had a packet of Doritos, and they were wrapped in an elastic band in her drawer in the kitchen, and the boys were eating the Doritos, and they found the plate, the teeth. Well, that was it. We would never eat anything that was opened in our house again. They were repulsed. So
I've had to retrieve a set of retainers from a cage at Five Sisters Zoo. So I know your pain. It's where they got dropped out of a child's pocket. So yeah, I can live that side of it.
Yes.
So
well, I loved my braces when I was getting off with somebody in the Walsers in Arbroath in 1984. Yeah, because I took them out, put in my pocket to get off with them, and then lost them in the back of the Walsers, and then my mum and dad were going to kill me. So yes, I can kind of sympathise with her, constantly losing the teeth. But yeah, so I think if I had known there was somewhere that you could contact,
yes,
that you could actually get some help and some advice.
Yeah.
The rule is to get carers allowance, it's 35 hours a week or more. Now, at the time when I was working, I certainly wasn't doing that. Later on with COVID, then it became that. But at the time when I was working, the boys were younger, it wasn't. So you weren't entitled to anything. You didn't feel that you were. When mum was brought out of hospital, I was given an emergency social work number, and she was put on a waiting list to go to this Henry Healy Centre, and that was for like 1 day a week. Well, 2 years, 3 years passed. We
And
never
you've
got a
still
call.
not got a place.
Still, and I used to phone up and I would say, but I think we're on the emergency list. And it was like,
Yeah.
it's
still the delay.
it's still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of carers, they really don't realise that they can go to a carers organisation and find out the information and advice, and see if you are on that list for the best part of 2 years. There's normally an advocate, an advocacy worker that will take that role on for you and will actually phone social work on your behalf and be your voice, because you're maybe at the stage where you're so emotional and so stressed and dealing with the boys and dealing with your mum and dealing with your work, and you just don't have anything left to sort of pick up the phone and say, I can't do this anymore.
It's part of our job is to do that emotional. You put that triage plaster
We
over
do.
before you pass them on to people. And I don't do it as much as Tracy does, but it is really very eye opening when you speak to people and go,
People are broken.
you really are
Yeah.
very much at crisis point here.
Yeah.
This is really interesting that it's taken to now for someone to recommend that part. And as you said, you didn't know anything about it at all. So
No.
the fact that that's happened as well is a failing on whomsoever was meant to assist you.
Yeah. Early intervention is everything, and that's what we try our best to do, is to get somebody when they first realise that they are in a caring role. We don't want them to get to crisis point. We don't want them to have to phone us and be so upset in the phone that they just can't take it anymore. If we can put in the tools at the beginning to make them be supported in their caring role, whether that be some respite, some work from some support from a social worker, anybody that can put some support in place is really helpful.
Well, what you were saying, Tracy, I didn't know this because I was told, well, my dad went into a care home for 2 weeks when my mum was in getting a hip replacement, and then because she'd been caring for him, so that was fine. But when I'd said about a holiday, could mum go into care for like even 5 days, because even like although the carers were amazing, they still phoned me a lot and I was still there every day. So who's going to pick up the pieces? What if she has a fall?
Who
do
cares
they
for the
phone?
carer?
And I was told, because I didn't live with mum, she didn't qualify for that respite. You've just said to me,
That's
not
Carers
true.
organisations well they have funds set aside. There are funds given by the Scottish Government for people to achieve respite, whichever that may be. It could be breaks, it could be equipment to take you out of that, go and have an iPad and sit and read for a couple of hours. It could be one of the ones from one of the places I used to work was someone bought garden equipment, so they could go outside and take a break, just leave their caring role in the house, but go and sit in the back, things like that, and gardening courses and yoga in the house. So even things like that work for folk.
Yeah, they really do. It gives you that wee bit of space just to breathe,
and the local authority would at that stage when you are at crisis point, is it where they should do an adult carer support plan, and there should be the avenues put in place to get you self-directed support budget. So when you're saying that you didn't qualify for mum to go into a care home, we actually think that could be untrue. We actually think that if the right if it is the right place for mum and it is the right care for mum, and Jane needs a break, absolutely you need to take a step away from your caring role, then there should be some money there for mum to be able to go into a care home. And if only you had known that at the time, you know,
right.
and
kind of feel, and also
and you feel so guilty about even thinking that, but you know, realistically, your batteries are only going to last forever.
And you've got to balance it out with, like, the kids need to have fun and go and do stuff as well. So, you know, it's not even, it is about yourself, but it's also about, well, you need to, that family time, but it's not about all the time, oh, I need to go to Gran's. Now, having said that, I know that there's so many people who do so much more than I did. And, you know, they've maybe got somebody in the house with them, or, and I wouldn't even compare my situation for a second to those folk who have got it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Never for a minute. And I really wouldn't, because even though it's stressful to go to work, I remember, I'd be doing the panto, and then, you know, you would be rushing home, or mum would be in the hospital or something. You'd be going to the hospital, then going home, then make the tea, then going back to the... But that said, still when I'm at work, I did feel like I was having a break, because you could still be you at work, and you could still, you know, be having fun. And, you know, work is great because you would get a lunch break and things. So actually, for people who can't work, who are full-time carers, and that is their role all the time, that is so much harder. And I need to say that I really wouldn't ever compare myself to people who are doing it all the time, because I can't even imagine how they cope with that. It's so hard.
I think even, like, you know, during the pandemic and still at the moment, we have so many carers that their services are still not up and running, and they are still with that person that you're speaking about in the home, and probably the fear is in them now that they don't ever want to either receive those services again, or they're still feeling a bit reluctant to leave the house. So we can see this sort of mental health crisis that's upon us, and we're so conscious of asking carers to self-care, to spend that even 10 minutes meditation per day to look after themselves, and we know that they don't think that they have that 10 minutes per day because they're working, they're caring, you know, and when you maybe do have that service back again, you can spend your day off. And I'm doing quotes here and I'm forgetting there's no camera because I'm on. You spend your day off on the phone doing all the admin for hospital appointments, ordering prescriptions, ordering pads, all these kind of things. So it can be so difficult. And wondered what your thoughts around that were as well, you know, the sort of mental health side of things, you know, post-pandemic.
Well, I think there's two things to it. Firstly, that so many services have stopped and haven't started again. And I think... well, there's two big things, like with mum, like at the start of COVID, and this is still going on, that the carers just aren't available. So, you know, you're being asked by authorities, can you pick up the pieces? What can you do? Could neighbours step in? Could friends step in? What else can be done? Now, that is nothing to do with the carers who have worked flat out through this whole pandemic on the front line. Absolutely. And they have been on their knees and still are. But if you're also being asked, what can you do, which I did say when I wasn't working, because there was lots of times I wasn't working through the whole pandemic, you know, a lot of it, because work was cancelled, then I could step in. But what if you couldn't? What if you were doing a job where you just couldn't? Or even now, I know my friend the other day was asked, can she do more? Can her and her sister, who are working full-time, what else can they do, because they're so short on carers? And could they ask anyone to help? So there's that big part of it. Then there's a part of it with confidence, where people have lost their confidence, especially, you know, elderly, not wanting to go out.
They don't want to be out.
That's true. And they're scared. So there's this whole thing, we've been terrified of COVID, and that's been fed to us every day in the media. And then you're saying to people, that's fine now, just go out, go out and about, just start getting on with it.
Wash your hands, you're
wait a minute, that's it, off you go. So carers are also terrified that because the world's opening up, that they're then going to bring something into somebody who's vulnerable in the house. So it's this horrible situation where there's fear, what they're going to bring in. There's also the isolation. There's also the fact that they've had no respite, that the fact that somebody who's maybe gone to somewhere like the Henry Haley or whatever club they would be, that's all been stopped. So they've had the responsibility of that all the time.
services start back up full time, many people won't go because of the fear of infecting someone vulnerable or immunocompromised, and they'll hold back on it, which again adds to the problem, exacerbates everything, because they get trapped again going, I could do this but I won't do this. So I see that too.
Yeah, so you feel completely stuck. And I think even with schools, because I teach as well in an ASN school, and like for those kids, all their clubs were stopped, and then it's hard for any teacher trying to do learning online. But if in your house you have maybe one child with additional support needs, or two or more, which is quite often the case, then how do you support and work and support all those children? And you might not even have internet in the house. Authorities were quite good at helping with that. But you still need to really give one-to-one support for that child, who a lot of the time they don't associate learning at home with doing schoolwork. So they don't want to do that. It was really, I know for a lot of those kids, it was really, really difficult, and for the parents and for the teachers.
No, I'm aware of that. That happened with my son. Tracy knows that background, that he's autistic, and he struggled very deeply with getting that distinction of, this is still schoolwork, you still need to do this. And he was in 4th year at the time, so he was obviously had exams and stuff, and really was, he didn't get it till they went back in, and it started to pick up, and it was just like, have you done any work? I don't know what I'm doing. Like,
and Mum and Dad are there, and the teachers, I mean, you and your wife are both working full time, so how are you then supposed to pick
60
up
hours a week at that point as well. So
teacher, dad, mum.
I'm rubbish at things like that. I'm not patient enough to be a teacher.
No, it is really hard. Both of my kids are dyslexic. The youngest one is extremely dyslexic. I mean, really, really, probably on the scale of 1 to 10. He's a 10. And so when Mum was really ill, and it was at that point where he was supposed to be studying, and teachers doing their absolute best, again, he's at the school I've tried, they've been fantastic.
That's good.
But they're sending home tons of stuff for him to read. He can't read that. There is no way that he could read screeds and screeds and screeds, small print, tons of stuff, big booklets.
If the words don't work for him.
So it's just, he can't read it, he can't process it, it's all too much. And he's a lazy wee monkey, let's be honest.
Well, they are.
Of course. And so...
Mum.
Mum, I don't even know what that is. Mum, I can't even get that iPad to work. The iPad. He's like, I hate iPads. I went, Alec, you're never off the iPad. I'm like, yeah, to watch films. But I mean, I can't get this to work. And that won't send to the teacher. And I tried to save that and it won't save. And then I tried to open this and it won't open. So there's all that going on. So you feel like, I can't support you because I need to be with Mum because things are so bad.
Of course.
But who's there to give him that support in the house? So, it was hard, and that was through exams.
It spills into your personal life again. The time that you would normally have had when he'd been educated at school, getting all the stuff that would have worked for him at school, using the tactics they use at school, but you have to then at 7 o'clock after dinner go, right, we'll sit down and have a look at this for you. Let's a wee bit of maths, a little bit of English, let's do that, And I can understand the difference.
Everybody's too tired, let's face it.
Well, yeah, we were doing,
I wasn't
doing it, my wife was doing maths with my son on Sunday because it's coming up for exams time, obviously, for hires and things like that, and he's just like, I don't really know what I'm doing with this. So Sunday afternoon, I was sitting at the dining table doing the square of a pyramid or whatever it was, but that kind of reinforcing this is the need to do. So I can understand that, certainly, that you're struggling to get the concepts working, because we don't know how the teachers teach and we don't know the concepts they give.
No, you don't.
You're not a maths teacher, are you?
No. And the teacher said how much as it was great they were all given iPads and stuff, that is great, but it doesn't work for everybody.
No, I know.
So if you're severely dyslexic, for him to do it through an iPad, it was just so that was so hard. And what the teachers, they were given laptops, and for some of the kids a laptop would have been a better thing.
Yes.
But to try to do it and open the different forums that he had to open and all that, it didn't work. It didn't work.
Did you see a lot of parents when you're in an ESN school? So did you see a lot of parents maybe having the same issues when it came to maybe moving back into school? Did you see them?
Well, I haven't spoken to the parents because I've not had any contact face to face with the parents.
So is it still all online as well?
Well, to be honest, because I'm in the school of supply and I go in and out.
Right. Okay.
So like, I went in yesterday and I had 6-year-olds. I went in on Friday and I had like 16 to 18-year-olds. So it depends on your kind of, it's very varied. Yeah.
That's difficult for you as well to balance, Jane. That's
Well, I'd rather have the teenagers, to be honest, for all their bother. The teenagers.
Are they more relatable?
Yes. I think the wee ones are gorgeous. They're very good, but I don't think I'm as good with them. No, I kind of look at them like, oh, what do we do? They just give the teenagers.
You're so far removed from it as well. You forget how little ones operate.
I know. That's right.
So that's certainly so. In terms of the school and things like that, what do you think you said that all the clubs and stuff. So are the provisions for ESN kids still as poor as they were during the pandemic, or are they starting to pick up for your school, or and round and about?
They're starting to pick up, but again, there's been out of the routine of that. There's a lot of them haven't picked up yet. A lot of them haven't. A lot of wee things have gone under as well from the whole pandemic.
Yes,
and again, it's like getting the kids to want to go, want to engage with that again can be difficult.
Because you drove the engagement away, and you now have to drive it again, but they've got out of the habit of it, so you're trying to reinstill that habit.
Once you lose that place within that small club or environment that you've maybe been going along to a couple of evenings a week, your place is gone because the services are so limited. So that's kind of what we hear a lot from carers as well, that my son did have a place but he wasn't engaging anymore, therefore his place is now gone, so we're back to no services and back to having that whole struggle at home where it's just you and your child and trying to do the support and things. And obviously adults as well, there's a lot of adults out there with additional support needs. Their services have completely stopped altogether. Absolutely. So that's down to a lot of people left residential because there was no carers, no services. A lot of people left residential and went back to live with their parents, and some of their parents could be in their 60s or their 70s at the time, and then they're back to full-time carers, and
or you couldn't visit your child or your elderly parent in a care home. Well, that was horrendous. Choice. Or the hospital. The hospital were really good actually. When my mum was in for a while, she went on hunger strike.
Oh, good grief.
I know. She had delirium, but she went on hunger strike. So they said to me, look, please come in, because we can't get her to eat. And I used to bring her in her favourite things and say to her, Mum, don't eat that. You mustn't eat that, because remember you're on hunger strike, so you must not eat that.
Did you reverse psychology?
Yes. Nice. And then I would say, Mum, I'm going to go to talk to the nurse. I'm going to the toilet. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And I would commit back. She would have eaten it. And I wouldn't mention it and would just carry on.
But that's good to let you know, because I know so many people were strictly kept out no matter what the circumstances were. So that's actually fantastic to hear.
They put her in a wee room, and it was just, you had to wear the full shebang and just literally go in the room and go out. But she just literally wouldn't eat. But they used to, like, for the first kind of couple of weeks, they would be doing the odd video call and things with her, and she was so angry because she didn't have dementia as such, but there was cognitive decline, and there was, she was elderly and frail and muddled, and then the delirium started, and she was so, and we were so lucky because she did die at home. But for people who couldn't be with their parents or their child or whoever, and who maybe they were confused as to why their family weren't with them, I couldn't even imagine that. It's horrendous.
What we're trying to say to people at the moment as well, I think a few of the hospitals have now maybe relaxed the rules a bit, but if you are an essential carer and you know that you could, what you've just suggested, what you've just said about Mum, you could get her to eat if you reverse psychology her and sort of walked away. You were the one that could persuade her to eat more than what one of the auxiliaries or one of the nurses can do. So we're saying to carers, actually put yourself down as the essential carer. Say to the nurse, I must get in. I realise your job is really difficult, but there's only certain people that can coax somebody into eating and drinking, and the only thing that makes you better and gets you out of that hospital ward is eat, sleep and drink. So if somebody's not doing that, they're not going to get better. And we see a lot of issues with hospital discharge and things just now, where people are not getting out of the hospital because they're not getting they're not being coaxed into eating and drinking, and they're obviously not going to get out of hospital if that's the case. And then it's going back to the hospital asking, well, can you put in the additional care for, they're medically fit, your mum's medically fit to leave the ward, can you put in a bit additional care until we can provide a care at home service? And people are saying yes because they want their loved one home more than anything, and then it's 5 and 6 and 7 weeks down the line they're still doing it, and then they're phoning us distressed, I can't do this anymore, please help. And
Things
You
like
know,
beds
the
that are too short.
emotion.
That was one of the ones we've experienced, as someone was supplied with a bed that was too short for the
Yeah,
person to sleep on,
Yeah, absolutely.
and they needed adaptation.
The emotional support that we're providing just now is at the highest that level I've been working with carers for 17 years, and this is the highest level of emotional support I've ever had to provide. And there are times where I just feel as if I've not done anything for somebody, because I used to be able to pick up the phone and get a tuck in at night. I could quite easily get a wee bit of respite for someone. I could get a grant for someone. You know, there's sometimes where days where you felt, right, ticked all those boxes, did an amazing job for that carer, and they felt listened to. But at the moment, we're just feeling, well, actually, is emotional support enough? Because we're really not doing that much. And to them, I know it is a lot that they've been listened to, but for us as care support workers, we're at the stage where we're like, we've banged on so many doors, but we're just not getting anywhere. So,
And I think as well, the problem is because of COVID, people were told because it was a tiny bubble. So if it's brothers and sisters, which I don't have, but you know, that could cause a lot of trouble.
Same here.
Who's that person? Who's the daughter or the son that goes in? And then they can cause trouble of, oh yeah, well, it's got to be them, or why has it got to be you? Or what?
Yeah.
So I know families that have fallen out because
Of
it's
course
one
they
person.
did.
And then when it's just you
Yeah.
to do everything, that's really hard as well, because like, see, when I would visit mum, I would put a rota together. So I would get all the troops and everybody was great, and I say, look, could you do a Wednesday afternoon, could you maybe do a Friday morning, or could you do whatever, so that I could go up at night, but I didn't have to do twice a day. If I was working, I could just go up at night. But then you would feel that you would have to go up twice a day, and then sometimes because you can stay longer, you didn't want to leave them, so your entire life was every day going back and
Go and
forward,
see
because
mum, go and see mum.
there's nobody to pick up the although when I must say in the summer, so that would have been so the 2020 summer, when everything was all kind of kicking off with the COVID.
You've mixed up the dates now, don't
I know, I don't even know.
Run into one
It's
another.
At
some point in the last couple of years,
It's crazy. So I remember my friends were good at going down to visit, and if it was a nice day, I'd bring her out in the wheelchair, put her in her path. They would just sit in the grass and they would talk to her.
That's nice.
So that was fabulous.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's
And
good
it
news.
was good fun for me as well, because at least you could have a bit of banter and a bit of chat, and your mum could never remember why. She couldn't understand why they weren't coming in. She kept going, come in. I go, no, mum, do you need to sit out? She was bamboozled. That's all you could do was sit in the garden.
They do nothing
They
else.
would do nothing. So my friend Karen had come down, and so she was in the garden, and then about 3 or 4 days after that, she phoned my mum to see how she was getting on. So my mum said, is that you, Karen? Yes, it's me. Oh, I had Karen Logan visiting me in the garden the other day. So Mum Karen went, it is Karen. It is Karen, Jean. Yes, Marion. So it's Karen.
Oh no.
Yes,
no.
Marion. So Karen came down. Well, Margaret Robertson saw her, and she was in a bikini in my front garden. So Karen's going, no, Jean, it is me. It is me. And then she says, well, Jane says that she got married recently. Karen's going, yes, that's right. Well, he's a lot older than her. And she went, it is Karen, Jean. It's Karen. Yes, I think he's 20 years older, but he's a very nice
there's a
man.
scandal.
That's right. He's a very
You
nice
could see her
man.
face, couldn't you?
He's a big man, but he's happy. So we got him a T-shirt for his birthday saying "Big but Happy." So I know. And Karen's like, should have thought, oh no, here, what's this we're getting? What are we going to get now? But yes, so it was good that people would go and
the
visit.
experience at least was pleasant-ish.
Yes.
Yes. I would always use the ish. It's that qualifier.
Yes.
You could say
It was
pleasant.
nice to spend more time with your family, and I was in this side of the world, and my brother lives in Australia, so I was here with my parents on my own. So I loved the time, and I would never ever give it up. But it was at the same time exhausting. So
I
yeah.
know. And bear in mind that obviously my father-in-law was ill through this, and my sister-in-law
Everybody's got a story.
was ill.
Of course.
It still is ill,
Everybody.
but it's like you're going, right, and my wife we couldn't see anyone at the points, so you're thinking, how are they going to be sitting on their own, not being able to see anyone
know,
because they're
I know.
immunocompromised or they're getting through surgery, and you're thinking, we want to come and see you, but we can't. So
Big
you're like,
doors and
let's see you
barricades.
on a tiny wee screen and
I
wave
know,
for
and
10
a lot
minutes.
of people can use, like my mum couldn't use an iPad or anything on her own or
No, that's true.
any of
There-
that.
there is a
No.
technology gap, so
Absolutely. So we just made the decision, like with, me and the boys were just going to go to my mum's, and we would just you know, we would
I
just
called
do
it the
that.
COVID corner. I sat in the quarantine corner.
Well, that's
Yeah.
it. You wear a mask, you stay a bit. But, you know, if it'd been like, so when my mum had died, so in the January of last year, if she had had a whole year of never seeing the boys, that would have been a misery.
That would have been awful.
An absolute misery. She was so close, and we've got great like video stuff and great times where they were, you know, because they were off college and school and things. And mum's, you know, we played games for hours, we played videos, we played, you know, so the time that they spent with her and the time that I spent with her, and then again towards the end, you know, the panto was cancelled. That all the burns, all the work that I would do in January was all cancelled. So actually, the only positive thing about COVID is she did get to spend so much time with us and at the end and be with her, where we would have been probably quite busy and that would have been more difficult. So I guess that was positive. I can't think of many things that have been positive.
It's a low-level positive in all the scheme of it, but it is
those memories close as well, Jane.
And you did get to see them
close, because that's really important. And thank you so much for being so open and honest about everything today. I think we wanted to just let Alan. We were going to ask. What do you do to relax at the end of a busy day if you ever get any Jane time?
That was the first question we came up with. By the way, like, so what does she do in her downtime? None of the caring questions.
Well, do you know, I know, because it's easier now because, well, you know, mum isn't here now and the boys are a bit older, so life
do you get to do your own thing?
Much easier. So yes, I just, like, to be honest, in the recent months, not much. What can you do? I watched everything on Netflix.
No, there's no Netflix left.
No, there's no Netflix left. So I just what everybody else does.
Just feet up and sit down and go, that's the end of that for the day. A cup of tea.
I'm not good at sitting down at night. That's when I like to be busy.
Oh, right.
So I like to kind of fanny about and do all my stuff at night.
Before you know it's midnight.
Yeah, or I'm talking to somebody on the phone, or I'm, you know, you can go round to somebody's house, they come to yours. So, but I am looking forward to getting out and about more again.
Yes,
and
that's going
things.
to be the advantage. And will you find that quite weird? Be like weirded out by no masks and people being in this? Because I know that I will initially be a little bit. When I'm close to people, will you feel like that, or are you looking forward to it? A lot of people are really excited about it.
I'm not really bothered about the no mask thing. I think if people still feel comfortable with them, that's great. Just keep wearing them. Again, because I still go into Mrs. Robertson, who's in her 90s, and you know, my friends get ME and things. So I would be careful and respect. I would try to be careful, but no, I'm quite looking forward to feeling a wee bit free again.
Yeah, we have to be mindful of those that are still very careful.
Yes, I think that's the thing, to respect
that's
the
going to
people
be the
that
thing
feel
as well, isn't it? Working with people and understanding, because
shielding.
You know yourself, having had that, having to explain your caring role to people, and like, no, it's quite difficult to kind of, I'm kind of digressing here, but what we're saying is that you're basically saying, look, I understand what you're doing, so I'm going to live with that, whereas a lot of people would just go, why are you still doing that? And it's getting that level of understanding.
No, I think everybody's circumstances are different.
Yeah,
and
I went about round the houses there.
Yeah, but it is still a serious thing for lots of people. At the same time, so many people have lost their business now through this and gone, you know, everything they've worked for their whole lives has gone under. So, like, you know, well, I was working in Putlockery over the summer, and it was outside, and it was so safe, and it was fantastic, and I absolutely loved it. But and then I loved doing panto, and then that got shut down early, and that was indoors. I'm looking forward to being able to go into a show and doing things like that again.
Yeah, I love a packed theatre. There's something great about going to that.
Yeah, because you can't not have that forever, but I understand that that's not for everybody just now.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It was the same thing with one of my memories for today was us being at the Lion King in Edinburgh 2 years ago, and you're like, that was magic.
Used to get out.
Do you remember just like people sitting and rubbing up and walking past you and things, and it was that kind of joy.
And I will say, even things like this is the first time I've done panto that year past where I've not had a horrible stinking cold. I always get a horrible sore throat with a cold, and not had
all my memories are all about having man flu. Every single one of them. But at this time of the year,
and you probably haven't had anything. So people go, oh, masks don't work. Well, I beg to differ because
The fact
that's the first
that
time.
flu numbers are.
I'm not cuddling
Like that.
anybody ever again.
I don't like people anyway, so it's great.
I know you don't.
Even my own family. No, it's,
I know I'm not a cuddly person actually. No, I don't.
I'm quite.
Tracy,
I'm-
you are Tracy.
I-
You're a
I
cuddler.
know, I've got, yeah, we are quite like that in the house, but it's always at inappropriate times when you're sitting like trying to concentrate. And, like my oldest son, he's taller than me, and just comes in and goes, "Oh my God!" And you're like,
Oh,
As long as you don't do
love you,
that
boy,
on a
but
daily
thanks
basis.
very much. I wouldn't lean on you. No, but no, I thanks for the honesty with it as well, because we do appreciate that it's hard work coming and speaking to people you never met before, because we're like,
Quite raw as
and-
well, because Mum's only gone a year, so it's quite raw. So thank you so much.
no, it's a pleasure, and I wish that there was things that I wish that I had known, and the things that are available. So the more that gets put out, the better,
And-
and the more support that people can get, then
Yeah. Let's
absolutely
raise carer awareness as much
raise
as we
carer
can.
awareness.
and thank you so much for your
Thank
help in
you.
doing that.
No, it's a favourite. Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee.
That is magic.
I don't think I've ever.
I do the worst Paul Daniels impression. I'm not doing it because my wife would be like, "Not
Just
again."
do it, Alan.
No, I can't.
You do it, and that's the end of it.
No, I'm not a god. Cut the recording.
I'm sweating.
If you help to look after a family member or friend who has a disability, long-term condition or an addiction, you are a carer. Carers can get help, you know, and are entitled to rights. If this is you, give the folks at North Lanarkshire Carers Together a ring, and they'll keep you right. Because carers have to know. Carers Together, working for you.